We're standing at the Eldorado County Historical Museum, located next to the fairgrounds in Placerville. The county museum was started by volunteers to preserve and collect artifacts from the Eldorado County history. The museum is open to the public, and along with the county museum and its exhibits, we have a archives and research room where people come to research the history of their families, of events, and the people of Eldorado County.
In 1849, a group of men from Michigan, calling themselves the Boston Newton Party, camped at the site which would become Shingle Springs. Several clear springs and large stands of pine and oak grew in the area. The men returned from prospecting and began operating a horse-powered shingle mill on Shingle Creek, producing 16,000 shingles a day. The area was called Shingle Machine. In 1850, rich placer deposits were discovered in the area. Soon, the canyons and gulches were filled with miners' cabins. Grizzly Gulch, now known as French Creek, was the richest paying canyon in all of Eldorado County. The first house in Shingle Springs was built in 1850 as a stopping place for travelers on the old immigrant Sacramento to Placerville Road. It was called the Shingle Springs House and stood on a hill near the springs at the western end of town. It was later called the Locust Inn, named for an old locust tree planted on the property. The Locust Inn stood until 1969. In 1851, the Missouri House was built to the east. When the Missouri House burned in 1852, it was replaced with the Planter's House. The Planter's House was a two-story building with a balcony around the second story. It was located at the western corner of Motherlode Drive and French Creek Road, near the railroad tracks. It had a lobby, a brick floor, a massive fireplace, a bar, dining room, and guest rooms upstairs. A large dance hall occupied the west end of the building. In front of the building was a large covered well, a wooden watering trough, and a hitching rack. In the back was a thick-walled cold storage room where perishable foods were kept.
There will be a grand ball at the Planters House, Shingle Springs, next Thursday evening, October 22nd, given by James Rush, the popular proprietor. Jones and Hand of Sacramento will furnish the music, and the supper will be up to the usual standard of excellence. Tickets, including supper, are $1.50, and teams will be stabled free of charge. Everybody is cordially invited to attend. Mountain Democrat, October 17th, 1896.
The Planter's House Cemetery is on a hill between Motherlode Drive and the freeway at the west end of town. A second cemetery, the Shingle Springs Cemetery on the south side of Motherlode Drive, was probably established about 1865 after the arrival of the railroad. An 1852 steam-powered mill was built that provided lumber for rebuilding Sacramento after the 1852 fire. There were also two blacksmith shops, but miners had to go to the nearby town of Buckeye Flat for supplies, as there were no stores in Shingle Springs until 1856, when a store opened in Planter's House. In 1865, during the Comstock Silver era in Nevada, Shingle Springs became the terminus of the Sacramento Valley Railroad. Along with the passenger depot, an 800-foot-long freight warehouse was completed. All the supplies and people that were destined for Virginia City and the Comstock lode traveled by train to Shingle Springs, where supplies were loaded on huge freight wagons for the trip up and over the mountains to the mines. Daily stages also carried passengers east to Placerville and over the Sierra to Carson City and beyond. Shingle Springs boomed. Buildings rose quickly to house businesses including stores, a post office, and a telegraph office. Freight teams by the hundreds waited for trains that arrived daily except for Sunday from Sacramento. Pulled by large teams, they were loaded for the trip east. At times, these wagons literally formed a continuous line from Shingle Springs to the Nevada mines, and it was said that if a wagon got out of line, it was nearly impossible to get back in. With the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869, freight could be delivered to Nevada by rail. Shingle Springs soon became a small town providing services for the ranches in the area. You can still travel the rails in Shingle Springs on the Eldorado Western Railroad on the second and fourth Sundays of the month. The round trip takes 30 to 40 minutes. Across the road from the Shingle Springs Depot stood a two-story native stone building. It had deep-set arched doorways on the lower and upper stories. It was used as a saloon and in 1914 a grocery store with living quarters upstairs. It stood until the early 2000s. About a quarter mile east of the railroad depot along the old road stood the Meyer Hotel. Franz Meyer, a native of Germany, was an early arrival during the gold rush traveling cross-country from Pennsylvania. During the early days of the gold rush, he had a cobbler shop in Placerville next to the blacksmith shop where John Studebaker made his wheelbarrows. Franz and his wife Anna were the hotel keepers of the Meyer Hotel for many years. In 1872, he owned land in Shingle Springs and east along the present-day Buckeye Road. Franz and other family members are buried in the small Meyer-Zencroft Cemetery that can be seen along Shingle Springs Drive. There have been 4 Buckeye schools at 3 different locations over the years. First school was at Buckeye Flat on the site of the present-day Buckeye School. 46 children between the ages of 4 and 18 attended in 1861. The second Buckeye School was between Buckeye Flat and Shingle Springs. Mrs. Lottie Kybers recalled that the building was destroyed by fire on March 21, 1898, and the school year was completed in a room at the Planters House Hotel. The new school, which stood where Bradford Park in Shingle Springs is today, was opened in September of 1898. It began as a one-room school, but as attendance increased, a woodshed at the rear of the school was turned into another classroom. Children attended the third school for 59 years, from 1898 to 1957, when the present-day Buckeye School was opened on or near the site of the original early Gold Rush-era school. The Shingle Springs Country Store, a fixture in the community for many years, stood across the road from the depot. It included a meat counter, carried groceries and produce, and housed the post office. It burned in 1977. The first postmaster in 1853 was D.P. Hall. At that time, the post office was in the Planters Hotel. In 1965, the post office was opened in what is now the train station coffee shop. Today, the post office is on South Shingle Road. The original immigrant road passing through Shingle Springs later became Highway 50. In the 1960s, due to the growth in the county and the construction of casinos at Lake Tahoe, the 2-lane road would no longer handle the traffic and the freeway was constructed. Old Highway 50 was renamed Motherlode Drive. From its start in 1849, Shingle Springs has been a booming gold town on the Sacramento to Placerville Road in the 1850s, a railroad shipping center in the 1860s, and later a town providing services for nearby farms and ranches. Although very different from the days when it was the terminus of the Sacramento Valley Railroad, today with businesses, shops, restaurants, and a county park, the historical Eldorado Western Railroad, and its concern for celebrating Shingle Springs history, it is still a center for the surrounding community.
The Eldorado County Historical Museum's research room has, over the years, collected documents and archives associated with the county. And we have research volunteers who are very skilled at helping people find any information they're looking for as it relates to Eldorado County. We have records that go back to 1850. We have a large collection of historical photographs, over 26,000 images that have been digitized. We have a large collection of historical maps, parcel maps, as well as trails, roads, mining maps, and we also hold regularly throughout the year a mining history day where people are welcome to come and ask about specific mines that they're interested in that were here in Eldorado County. It's a wonderful resource for anyone who's interested in researching the history of a particular person, place, or thing in Eldorado County.